Does in-state recruiting still matter? Welcome on into a special Locked On crossover edition of Locked On Auburn. I'm Zac Blackerby and Locked On Bama host Luke Robinson. We're going to talk about all these commits to Auburn and Alabama, who sticks, as well as who's going to have the next, who's going to have the best 5 years of the next 5 years. But let's start things off with how important in-state recruiting is. It's a fascinating situation, Luke. You look at where Bama is, they're number 2 in the country. And depending on where you look, they don't have a top 5 player in the state of Alabama. If you look at 247, and Auburn is right behind them at number 5 or number 6 class in the country, depending on where you look. And they've got almost all of the top 10 players in the state. I never thought we'd see anything like this, Luke.
I'll be honest, I didn't either. Now, before we get into this debate, I want to make myself perfectly clear. I love the state of Alabama. I grew up here. I'm from here. I'm with the HSA radio network. I love calling these guys in championship games. I've been doing it for about 20 years.
Sure.
And I have been a proponent of dominating the state ever since I started keeping up with recruiting, back when I had to call hotlines that were 45 cents a minute or whatever they were. Okay. So I'm pro all that. What I've determined, though, because, you know, it's sort of like the way Alabama's been framed lately is Alabama's been, I think, as the Locked On recruiting host that you have on all the time said, they took 2 knuckle sandwiches, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that the quote he said? And I was like, okay,
referring to Antonio Coleman and to Derek Smith.
And that is fair. That is a fair thing to say. However, here's another fair thing to say. Would I trade classes with Auburn? And the answer is no. And so that led me to think, boy, that's weird, because obviously Alabama's being dominated in the state. And so what I did was I went back and looked at the state of Alabama for years. Now, I don't have all this empirical data, but a lot of it is sort of up here and some of it is on this paper. And what I wanted to say is, I don't know that dominating the in-state is a big deal anymore.
Oh my gosh, come on. Are you serious?
Just hang on. Hear me out before you dismiss it all.
Sure.
Yes, I think I would rather do it than not. I'm trying to preface this and be as fair as I can certainly be.
Of course you would, Luke. Okay. Of course you'd rather have it than not.
Now,
sure.
But if it leads to, if not dominating it leads to the second or first best class in the country, I'm okay with it. I'm not despondent like I would have been in the Gene Stallings era. Like I would have been in the Pat Dye, Ray Perkins era, back when, back in the day, in the 80s, early, mid-90s, even maybe late 90s, if you dominated the state of Alabama as Alabama or Auburn, the other team's class stunk, probably. Right. You know why? Because the net wasn't as wide. Now the net has changed completely. I mean, Alabama's getting dudes from Germany and Canada, and will they be any good? I don't know. But I just know they've recently got some of those dudes. Like John Mechie was from Canada. He was pretty doggone good.
Sure. Yeah, it is interesting because like college football has become so fluid across the board with the transfer portal, with NIL, even with coaching mobility now. Like, has that trickled all the way down to high school recruiting? But still, like, Luke, when Alabama has a home game, who's the coaching staff going to go see on Friday night? I mean, you can't go to California to watch these kids. Does that matter still, or do you think?
I'm wondering. Hey, I'm with you. I'm on the same wavelength, but I'm asking myself, does that really matter anymore? Because here's the thing. You know, most of these kids are going to sign in December. Most of these kids, they might have, the way things are going, they may have some publicity event that their agent wants them to show up to at this point. So we don't know. And if you're telling me, okay, look, yeah, some of the dudes, Cam Coleman, would I take Cam Coleman on my team? You dang right I would.
Sure.
But, you know, if Alabama goes and gets, and I know they're not in the same class, a Caleb Cunningham, then I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm good either way. I'm good with either one. They both look really fantastic players, right? And I started looking at some other things. And again, some people will say this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but just, again, hear me out before you just say Bammer and turn the show off. But as my daughter,
trying to get you this early on a Saturday when we're recording this.
Listen, because I have too many children, and they all have to call for money at various parts of the day. They figured that out. They can't all call in the morning. One of them's got early morning, one of them's got late morning on down the line.
Good for them.
All right, Alabama has 9 players that are on the NFL's top 100 list that just came out.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is from the state of Alabama. Alabama has 4 Heisman winners in the last 12 years, whatever it is, 15 years. None of them are from the state of Alabama.
But those aren't the players that made the run that Nick Saban had so special. It was that if somebody went down, the role player that Alabama had, would it be a star anywhere else for the last 15 years? That's what he built.
Again, partially true. I get what you're saying. And especially in 08, everybody loves to compare Auburn's class this year and Hugh Freeze's second year, or maybe last year, whatever, with Nick Saban's 08 class. I get it. And that does make sense. And that holds
some similarities for sure.
Definite similarities. Let me just pull up. And again, I'm not trying to be random here just to emphasize my point.
I know you love recruiting. And like you said, you love the state of Alabama. You've thought about this a ton. I genuinely want to hear what you're going to say.
All right. In 2021, I don't want to pull up the class of 2022 or 23 because I don't think they've had enough time for us to really judge them how good they've been yet. But just look at this. And here's one other point before I get into this. I got to tell you that I was thinking, okay, if I were arguing against what I'm saying, my first thing would be, yeah, but if you recruit state of Alabama guys, aren't they less likely to transfer out of Alabama or Auburn because they're closer to home and they're like, I should stick this out, because I'm here and all this stuff.
Okay.
So I pulled up 2021, and again, kind of randomly, but I also thought it gave us enough sample size. Number 1 in that year was Kool-Aid McKinstry. Number 2 was Deontay Lawson. 2 bona fide superstars. One's already a first-round pick. One probably will be.
Sure.
But then you go down the list. Number 3 was Dylan Brooks. He signed with Auburn. He's at Kansas now. Number 4 was Scooby Williams, signed with Florida. He's at A&M now. Number 5 was Lee Hunter, signed with Auburn. He's at UCF. Armani Goodwin, went to LSU. He's now at UAB. Number 7 was Kamari Lassiter, who signed with Georgia. And you say, well, see, there's one he was either a first or second round pick. I can't remember. But you're like, yeah, see, he shouldn't have gotten out of state. But Kamari Lassiter's originally from Georgia. He already had ties to Georgia. So if you want to count him in the state, so be it. I get it. You could also make the argument he's not really a native Alabamian.
Sure.
Number 8 was Ian Jackson, who's transferred from Alabama. Number 9 was Harrison Wallace, who signed with Penn State. He's still with Penn State, but the only reason I know that is because I just looked it up and I hadn't heard anything Harrison Wallace has done. I'm not taking shots at him. I'm just telling you the truth.
Yeah, I don't know who Harrison Wallace is. Sure. So
the other thing I looked up, and again, I found this very interesting because I'm with the AHSA Radio Network. Us as a group, we have more Auburn fans than Alabama fans, and Auburn fans kept saying, we got to get into Thompson. We got to get into Thompson. And I'm like, yeah, Thompson's awesome. I mean, they've been to the last 6 state championships and won 4 of them. That's incredible. Right. Yeah. And we sign all the Thompson dudes, right? But then here are the Thompson on 3 just happens to have this information. I didn't know they had it until I started looking this up.
Yeah.
But the best player they say to come out of Thompson is Jeremiah Alexander. He's at Alabama now. He's been there a couple years. Hadn't really made a dent yet. We hope he does this year.
Okay.
Number 2 is Peter Woods, who was very good for Clemson, but we don't know what he's going to be. I mean, he's only been there a little bit of time. Amari Kite signed with Bama, already transferred. Anquan Fagans just committed to Auburn. And Tony Mitchell, boy, we know about him. I don't know where he is now. Traquan Fagans committed to Bama, was at Bama, went to USC, now at Central Florida. Then you go to Tony Bell, that's 04, so let's skip that. We're keeping modern day. Talia Tungavailoa, great player, but he did transfer and he went to Maryland, and he did very well for Maryland.
Yeah, led the Big Ten in passing, I think, last year. Am I right on that?
Exactly, but also on a team that just wasn't very good. Now, it's not all his fault.
Sure.
But Stanton Rammel, who's at Michigan State, we still don't know about. And then you get into some other guys that are like, okay, they played college football, but we don't know much. I was shocked because when I think about Thompson, I think about stuff. I think about superstars that do nothing but win are awesome. And when I look at that list, I'm like, well, nobody's really had like this blow up year that I thought somebody would.
But you still look at it and you're like, well, those guys are solid. Like, they've got traits that project to the next level. I mean, all of those guys, that's why they were ranked as high as they were in, was it 21 that you just read, the 2021 class? So it's like, you'd rather have them than not. And the folks that went to Auburn, like any player that played for Coach Harsin and chose to leave because it didn't pan out, like that is 100% fine. Like I'm totally okay writing that one off because I think the staff in place is better now than it used to be. But I mean, you went across the board there. But I mean, look, speaking of Thompson, like Jarrett Smith, we're recording this Saturday morning. Jarrett Smith announces tonight he's expected to pick Auburn. We'll see. But it's like, I'd rather have Jarrett Smith in the class than not. Anquan Fagans, speaking of Thompson, committed to Auburn. Like, I'd rather have him committed than not. Right?
And I'm with you.
That's not a crazy thing to say.
No, it's not. I'm not saying these guys aren't good at all. I'm just telling you the finger pointing of, and hey, I've done it myself back in the day, but when you're the victim of the finger pointing, you always look for like, okay, well, what's the other side of this, right? And my only point is, back in the Pat Dye and Ray Perkins and Stallings and all those eras, or even Tommy Bowden, Terry Bowden, if you won the state, you felt pretty good. The other guy didn't do so well because that's who you chose from. If you got a guy from California, it was a monster story. I remember Alabama got Prince Wimbley, I believe, from California as a wide receiver in one of Bill Curry's classes. Everybody's like, what are we doing going to get a California dude? Because in the 90, you remember the 92 team was loaded with Alabama guys. And it's still one of the ones that warms the cockles of my heart. But these latest round of Alabama players.
The what?
I'm sorry?
Warms what?
The cockles of my heart.
That's
a place.
So I think this is why this sounds like copium to me.
Agreed.
Because I think you are missing the biggest point in all this. I want to bring that up in just a second, right here on this crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Bama. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what keeps your ride or die alive. Luke, can you imagine buying a part for your car, truck, SUV anywhere other than our friends at eBay Motors?
I really couldn't. They're the best. And you talk about choices. They got choices all over the place.
122 million parts. 122 million choices.
That's a lot.
It's insane.
And here,
you think eBay Motors is concerned about recruiting the state of Alabama? Probably not. They don't need it.
They don't need it. I only know 4 parts to the car: the wheel, the steering wheel, the bumper, and a turn light. That's the only parts I could personally order. But I've looked it up and I'm like, now this is making more sense. I could do this and then get it to a guy who fixes cars for me and save me some money. And I've done that.
Yeah, so keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Luke, the thing that never comes up when I see Alabama folks talking about this, and so I want to give you the opportunity to talk about it now, is out of these top 10 players in the state, we're going to use On3's ranking. So Turbo Rogers is in the he's 10th. He's 10th here. So assuming Auburn lands Jarrett Smith tonight, Ohio State would have 2. Texas would have KJ Lacey and Anthony Rogers, of course, is Alabama. So Auburn has the other ones. Of those 10, if you need me to go through them, so we're talking about the same group of 10, let me know. How many of these guys did Alabama try to land?
All right, if you go through the list, and again,
offered, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, people get mistaken. There's offered, and then there's like offered and you can commit right now.
No, I'm talking about Naheem offered.
Yeah, okay. Naheem offered, I would take Naheem offered today, tomorrow, yesterday, anytime, ever.
100%. Jarrett Smith?
I don't believe Alabama.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
And look, do acknowledge this for me. Every now and again, 5 stars have a weird final grouping. His final grouping apparently was South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Auburn. That's a bizarre final grouping. It just is. Just like Juju Lewis's of Indiana, Auburn, Colorado, and USC is weird. So for whatever reason, it didn't work for Alabama, or Jarrett Smith didn't work for whatever. So no.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think I read somewhere it was a scheme question. So Derek Smith, obviously, yes.
Obviously. And look, if they can get him with the brother, especially with these scholarship limitations going up, they'll do it right now.
Right. Anquan Fagans.
I would say yes, because Alabama missed on some other safeties they were after first, but I would say yes.
Eric Winters.
I don't think Alabama really ever put the effort into him that Auburn did. Now, you could say maybe he gave the impression to Alabama, I'm not coming there, but
he's not in their top schools or whatever. So yeah, Malik Autry. Yes. Y'all hosted several visits. 100%. Yeah. Zion Grady.
Well, he was committed to Alabama, and the new staff, I think, has been sort of taking a wait-and-see approach. Let's see how this season goes kind of thing.
I think the old staff wanted him. I don't think the new staff did, so we won't count him. Caleb Falk, yes.
Oh, I feel like Alabama would definitely take Caleb Falk.
And then KJ Lacey and Anthony Rogers. So of those, I'm assuming no for KJ, correct?
Well, Alabama got Keelan Russell, and that's the guy they wanted.
Right, yeah. So 5 of the top 10, according to the On3 industry rankings, are guys that Alabama wanted that don't currently have.
Correct.
And that's something that just hasn't happened in a decade and a half.
Agreed. And I also agree with what you said earlier about it sounds like copium. But here's another way to put that. It's not really paranoia if ants really are all over you. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so it sounds like copium. At the same time, doesn't this make some sense? Because if look, 20 years ago, if Auburn were doing this in state, you know what Alabama's class would be made up? A lot of guys named Rob-E. Staten. You don't remember who that is. You weren't born yet. I do. And there's some people listening to this that go, yeah, I remember that. His name on his license said Rob-E. Staten. And that's the kind of guys Alabama was getting committed because they were having trouble recruiting in state and recruiting anybody they wanted. And so, but now the net is much wider. Alabama's brand is much bigger than it was. I know some people don't like to hear that. Alabama's brand is huge. And on top of it, you know what else? Alabama as a school is recruiting more out of state. And I'm not saying I love that. I'm just saying it's true.
But once again, if Nick Saban went after these guys, he wouldn't have missed on all 5 of these guys. I just don't believe it. I
totally agree.
And so we're acting like this is some great thing that DeBoer and Saban are on the same level. And Luke, they're just not. They're just not. And so much of the Bama media is carrying water for that program. It's insane. It's unbelievable. Somebody yesterday on a show said, when he was asked about the DeBoer practices that were open, said, yeah, Saban practices were cool, but this DeBoer one is it's a little bit better. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like all of this stuff that's just being said about the current state of Alabama football, like we're acting like it's better than it was. And it's just not. There's no way that's true.
Fair. I think it's also fair to say when you see somebody like J. Boy Crane or one of these other guys say Hugh Freeze is creating a monster, I go, he did just lose New Mexico State, right? I mean, like we do need to say that. It's the same kind of thing. I think you have people toting water for both places right now.
Sure.
And my whole point about this is I think you're absolutely right. I don't think Nick Saban would have missed on all these folks. But I'll say this. When you have a transition from the greatest coach of all time to whoever's next, there's going to be a gap. And I think what's happened is DeBoer has filled that gap much better than I ever thought he could. No way was it going to be.
I agree with you there.
Be right there. And so I'm like, okay, if he's missing on some Alabama dudes I'm with the HSA Radio Network. I live in Alabama. I was born in Bama. I want these guys. But if he's getting it, if he's replacing them with guys who are like 5 stars from Cali, I can't really complain is my point.
Yeah, I get it. It's a fascinating dynamic that I didn't see coming. With Alabama like not getting in-state guys, but still having the number 2 class. It's just wild. And is that going to be a trend that we see in the future? Like, I think so. Like when you look at the 2026 class, I mean, it's Auburn leans or Auburn commitments all over the place. Like, I don't think it's going to change to next year either.
I don't. I will say this. I think the other thing that's happened in Freeze's favor is he comes in at a time when the state of Alabama seemingly has a lot of good, highly rated guys. Saban leaves, so automatically, everybody's got to, hey, we got to see this new, what's up here. Freeze already knows the areas. He's from the South, all those things. And they are 2026 guys. So Eric Smith was committed to Alabama for a long time and flipped. Let's see if Auburn keeps their guys through 2026. I know everybody loves to flip somebody else, and they think you ain't flipping anybody from me. That's what everybody thinks, right? And I promise you, there's going to be some changes.
Yeah, I mean, since Freeze has been here, that hasn't been the case yet. But it's eventually going to. I mean, it's a numbers game. Like, it's eventually going to happen. So we'll see who that is. Who's got the next? Who's got the best 5 years when you look at the next 5 years, who's in a better spot to succeed? And then who sticks on this current class? We'll discuss in just a moment on this crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Bama. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sports book. Luke, can you imagine wagering anywhere other than our friends at FanDuel?
No. Why would I? It's
Don't
so
even want to
easy.
think about it. Yeah.
It's so easy. I mean, you know how many technical difficulties me and Jimmy Stein have on a daily basis. And
I'm surprised we even got connected today.
FanDuel makes it easy for us. And
you did have to call
we love
me.
FanDuel.
I did have to tell you where to click to jump in here. I did have to tell you where to click.
That is okay. You don't have to tell everything.
I tell you that all the time. I tell you that every time I listen to your show.
Okay, fair.
Are we doing this right now? No. Be sure to go to our friends at FanDuel. Hey, right now this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel's the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and the Locked On Podcast Network. What's the win total for Bama?
9.5.
You taking the over or the under on that?
I'm taking the over with my fingers crossed. And I really believe Alabama goes 10-2.
I got y'all at 10-2 as well. Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But boy, you look at this schedule and it's difficult, and it leads us into who's going to have the next best 5 or 7 years. And I think the way we quantify who had the best year is about to change. I really do.
All right, well, hold on. Yeah, so be sure to go to our friends at FanDuel, FanDuel.com. Check them out. Who has the best 5-year stretch moving forward between Auburn and Alabama? So you say that how we measure success is about to change. What does that mean?
What it means to me is, did you get in the playoffs and how far did you go? Mm-hmm. If you lose to a rival, look, you know what you're an NFL guy. You love the Patriots, right?
I do love the Patriots, yes.
And I have 2 sons that love the NFL, and I love NFL football. I don't really have a team, but when the NFL comes on and says, one of the hardest hitting, most hated rivalries between the Washington football team and the Dallas Cowboys, I'm like, y'all don't know what heated and hated is. Heated and hated is Alabama Auburn. Mm-hmm. In pro football, you play them twice every year, and then you might play them in the playoffs. And so I think in the NFL, guess what? Coaches are judged on, did you get to the Super Bowl? Because even if you get to the AFC Championship, NFC Championship 2 or 3 years in a row and you don't win it, didn't the Eagles do that exact? I mean, they got after Andy Reid. Yeah. Andy Reid pretty good for that. It turned out pretty well for the Chiefs. But my point is, it used to be, did you beat Alabama? Did you beat Auburn? Did you beat Tennessee? Did you beat LSU? Did you beat Georgia? Whatever. I think it's about to be, okay, you can lose. If Alabama loses to Georgia and to Auburn this year, or excuse me, Tennessee and Auburn this year, let's say, but they get in the playoffs and win it all. Yeah. Ain't nobody going to care. Now, Auburn fans will say, we won the Iron Bowl, and be like, yep, you did. Now, let me go polish my ring. That's the way I would treat it. Yeah. And the same thing, that's the way I treat 2017, frankly. I mean, Auburn beat us in Auburn. Straight up, worst beating we've taken from Auburn under Saban. And we go and win the national championship, and I just don't care anymore. I think Auburn fans would say the same thing. If they lose to Bama, lose to Georgia, and go win the national championship, they won't worry about it.
Yeah, no, I think that year definitely proved that. I mean, Auburn beat Georgia and Alabama within a span of 3 weeks. Both teams were number one when they beat them, and Auburn kind of whooped both of them. But then they watched Georgia and Alabama play each other in the national championship game. It's like, all right, well, you won, but at what cost, I guess. I'm with you. With the expanded college football playoff, while it lowers the bar of what it takes to become a playoff team, that will now become the standard of if you had a successful season. I'm 100% there with you. And I think Alabama's in a great spot to go this year. I think Auburn's in a solid spot to go next year in the 2025 season. I think they'll have Freeze's guys in here enough. You'll have 3 top 10 classes that are a part of that roster, plus whatever you do with the transfer portal. And I think Auburn's schedule next year is manageable. You get Georgia and Alabama at home. If you win one of those and take care of business everywhere else, like, you're in the running for it. So I'm with you. Over the next 5 years, I think both of these teams make the college football playoff multiple times.
And the other thing that's going to make it different is, I think Auburn fans, or any fan that's like an Auburn program that's a good program but didn't ever make the playoffs, right? Hadn't made the playoffs, right? They could justify it by saying, yeah, because Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, they're always there. And then we don't, there's one other, Oregon who doesn't play anybody, or Texas who doesn't really play anybody until they get there. Yeah. And or Kansas, not Kansas State, Cincinnati, something like that.
Yeah. Well, or Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma always win, and I don't think they ever won one. So
they didn't. Yeah. They got slapped every time, right. Except for the Georgia game. But, I think now with 16, if you're a fan of a team like Auburn, you're like, wait a minute, Kansas State, Utah, and Liberty just got in? No, we got to get in now. I don't care what we got to do. Sure. And if you're Auburn, you should feel that way.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, all right, who sticks? So you asked the question in our quick production meeting. There are
is 30 seconds a meeting? It was for me in high school, but I don't know about now.
I don't know. It depends on how efficient it is, I think. So both teams have 21 players committed right now, Auburn and Alabama. Is that right? Auburn has 21. Does Bama have 21? Okay, so let's say 42. 42 total commits between Auburn and Alabama in the 2025 class. What should we set the over-under for this conversation at? For how many guys sign with Auburn or Alabama on early signing day in December?
Yeah, I said the signing over-under is 38.5, and I'm taking the under.
I think I would take the under too. I think I would take the under on that too, because I think you are going to see Auburn be in a situation where I think they're going to have to change out a few of the guys that are committed in their class, because I think they're going to try. I think they're trying to get a top 3 one. And so if you do that, you need more dudes, and you can't keep all the dudes that you currently have. So, and then just the natural, fluidity of recruiting. So yeah, I would say I would take the under on 38.5.
I'll say this. I kind of like Auburn's doing it. In the past, I hated that, you had to cull guys, but it's a necessary evil. I mean, you got to, because if you feel like a guy's not good enough, or he gets hurt or whatever, and you see a guy who's a senior who blows up like Josh Jacobs, Josh Jacobs came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden Alabama's like, we got to have him.
Yeah.
Whatever we got to do.
He was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And it worked out. But I think now it's better to say, okay, we had a top 3 class just for the brand, because your signing class every year is going to look different. I mean, this signing class Auburn has now will look much different in 2 years when you look back on it. And because it's what I just read off to you, like, oh, right. That guy transferred. He did. That guy left. That guy was arrested, whatever. Those things happen. And it happens a lot more now than it used to. So classes are going to look different every year, even the ones in the past.
Yep. No question about it. Luke, this has always been fun. Somebody did a power rankings on Twitter of Locked On Auburn guests, and you were like 3rd.
No,
like, he hardly ever comes on.
6. I was 6, and swear to God, I don't know who that guy is.
You saw it?
Did I see it? I framed it. Listen,
can you send it to me, because I can't find it? I've had everybody call me about it, but I somehow can't find it.
I will find it, and I will send it to you. And I was like, I think I can do better. I was like,
is that why you reached out wanting to do this show?
It motivated me to reach out for this. Now, I know some Auburn people are not going to get by the first interaction we had that was at all, tense, where you go, are you kidding me? But if you just hang on for this whole episode, I think you'll see I was as fair as a Bammer could be to you. And if you're a Bama fan watching this, I think you'll see why I love Zac Blackerby so much.
Sure. The first time Luke and I met was at the Atlanta airport. We had a flight at the same time, and you came to my gate, and you saw me. You dropped your bags and sprinted to me to hug me. And it was a beautiful moment.
It was.
I'm tearing up just thinking about it. So we like each other.
Yeah.
We're friends. Be nice.
I'm a little taller than you.
Like a whole foot. It's insane. We took a picture, and we had to crop it because, we couldn't find a stool for me to stand on. So, all right, this has been a crossover edition of Locked On Bama and Locked On Auburn.